Welcome back to the Prosperous Empath. There's a quote that I share in today's episode that feels so relevant, and for me, it really sums up what today's episode is all about. And so I wanted to share it with you here by way of introducing today's chat. And it is this: the quality of our success in business is only as good as the quality of our relationships. Now, I think this rings true across the board in entrepreneurship, but I think it is particularly true for those of us who identify as ambitious empaths because we tend to have a high value orientation towards relationships. We naturally prioritize relationships and the individuals in our lives. And in business, I think this often looks like clients becoming friends, colleagues becoming clients, and those relationships getting reinvented, iterated on, and evolved over time. For me, so many of my clients have become friends. One of my oldest clients was even a bridesmaid in my wedding. Just so many different iterations. And that is so true as well for today's guest on the podcast, because today I wanted to invite Laura Kline-Taylor Rothel on the podcast. She's already been on the podcast once. We talked all about the wisdom of cycle tracking, and we'll link to that episode in the show notes if you haven't already listened to it. But Laura was my very first full pay client in my coaching business back in 2014. She went on to become a coach, getting trained by the same coach training program that I graduated from. Our relationship later iterated, and we both became colleagues within that same coach training program as mentor coaches and leaders in training. And then that relationship later evolved again when she joined the Unbounded Mastermind. And then after she graduated, she was really just a natural fit for me to bring on as a co-coach in the Unbounded Mastermind. So when I was looking to really create a unique new business offering for early entrepreneurs, Laura was just the natural fit because she's been such a part of my early entrepreneurial journey, and we've really been interwoven within each other's businesses for almost the past decade. So you can imagine that I know her pretty intimately and I trust her implicitly. And for those of you considering the Emerge Mastermind, you may not have a sense of her. And so I wanted to have her on the show today so you could get to know her a little deeper and to have a felt sense of how we collaborate together in case you're considering the program for yourself. And even if you're not, I think that you'll find this episode really useful because for so many of us, as we evolve and grow and scale our businesses, it often looks like removing ourselves from the day-to-day operations of our business and looking at who we can strategically trust to offload some of our work to. And so you may be in that part of your journey, in which case the Unbounded Mastermind may be a fit for you, or potentially working with a higher level coach one-on-one. But I think some of the lessons that we talk about in the episode will resonate all the same. So a little bit about Laura. Laura holds the designation of Professional Certified Coach within the International Coaching Federation. And she's also a certified holistic postpartum and birth doula. And she holds she's a qualified administrator of the Intercultural Development Inventory. Something I really appreciate about Laura that she brings to our partnership is that she has over a decade of experience in global training environments, including corporate for-profit companies and international nonprofits. And I really appreciate that background that she brings in education and training to our partnership. It really balances out my economist background. So today on the episode, we're going to just jump in and hear a little bit more about her journey, who she was before, during, and now, how she got started. We're going to share a little bit about our partnership and how we balance each other out and what are some of the unique gifts that we each bring to the partnership. And I hope that you enjoy the episode. I I'm such a strong believer that the path of empathic entrepreneurship, it's not just about business. It's truly a way of life, and it's a conscious choice to create, to impact, and to live authentically and in a values aligned fashion. So I hope you can hear in today's episode how we practice that in our own lives, as well as in our businesses and in our partnership. If you're considering the Emerge Mastermind or one of our other program offerings, we will link to the program details in the show notes for today's episode. And if you'd like to have an in-person experience with both of us and how we collaborate together, you are welcome to join us for our non-networking power hour. It is a monthly free community offering that we offer each month, typically on a Monday. We'll link to the next one in the show notes. We still have one outstanding event coming up before Emerge launches at the end of September, but the next non-networking power hour is Monday, September 18th at 12 noon Eastern time. We would love to have you. I would love to hear what you take away from today's conversation as you consider the quality of your business partnerships, how they've evolved over time, and what you're interested in practicing in your next iteration of your becoming and your unfolding. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath Podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hey, Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, here we are.
Well, I know I was sharing this with you before we hit record, but it feels really synchronistic that we're recording this episode together to share about our journey together and the role that you play in our new Emerge Mastermind that's launching at the end of this month, because it is a program for new entrepreneurs, for new empath entrepreneurs. And you have been such a part of my own journey as an empathic entrepreneur. And so it feels like just full circle, like completely full circle.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense in a different kind of way.
Well, why don't we jump in and perhaps you can share with our audience a little bit about who you are and your journey to becoming a coach.
Yeah. So who I am a mother of two. I am a wife. I live in Rochester, New York. I use my business name, Laura Kline-Taylor Coaching. That's my maiden name. I identify so much with my surname. But my married name is Rothel. So if you see a long string of names in the copy, I just interweave between who I am in business and who I am at home as a mother. Sometimes it feels choppy and messy, and sometimes it feels totally integrated and flowing. But I always introduce myself first and foremost as a mother, especially because who my clients are working mothers. They're people who are bosses at work, and they're bosses in business, and they're bosses at home. And sometimes it's a struggle, and sometimes it flows. And so I really like to lead with the I'm on this journey with you sort of vibe, and that feels fulfilling to me. And I get the feedback that it also really helps to have some relatability components with my clients. My clients are mostly entrepreneurial spirits. If they're not entrepreneurs themselves, they have this really creative leadership quality that leads in their work. I live in Rochester, New York, as you know, but I've built mostly a virtual business. And now that we're out of COVID, I'm trying to get a lot more local programs and workshops up and running, which is exciting.
I love how you say that in your marketing, that you coach entrepreneurial spirits and spiritual entrepreneurs. I resonate with that so deeply. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about your work prior to coaching, because I feel like that part of your career plays a lot into your work with education and training. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about who you were before becoming a mother and a coach.
You know what? Today's September 5th, and 18 years ago today, I got on an airplane to move to Madrid. And I always remember it, the 5th of September, because it was also the day Hurricane Katrina came, and I couldn't care less at the time what was happening in the world, because I was so tunnel vision on where I was going on my own personal journey across the globe. And it was that moment. I just wrote an email actually to the first Spanish school that hired me to be their educational director, saying thank you and all that it set me up for. So after I lived in Spain for 3 years, I pursued a master's in international education. And it was sort of something I couldn't not do. I taught English overseas. And so I wanted to learn all of the theory behind that. And I just pursued a career from that point on in intercultural communication and human development. And it's just a passion of mine to be curious about how people interrelate and how cultures interrelate, and how we can become more curious and open-minded by having to live outside of our comfort zones culturally. And that's just something I'm passionate about as a human, but it totally teed me up for coaching, because coaching is human development, and it's all about how we can step outside of our comfort zone, if not geographically and culturally, just spiritually and energetically as well.
That's something I really appreciate. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. It's something I really appreciate with you in our partnership, because of your background in education and training. Like, I have it that you listen with another layer that myself as a coach and an economist by training, like, that I do not always think or facilitate through. Like, I have noticed about myself over the years that I'm often short with words, and I think things very literally. And I say it once and I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. And then I just assume that other people understand. And with our partnership, I've come to really trust that if what I say doesn't land, if people don't understand what it is that I intend, that I have you to partner with to ensure that the understanding comes through. And I just so appreciate that having that educator's listening provides such a lovely balance to my own listening.
That's cool. Yeah. I never thought of it that way either, but there's a data results kind of way of listening. And then there's an educator teacher way of listening. And it's a cool balance. Love that.
Yeah. Well, I love you. Well, let's chat a little bit about who we are to each other, because I think we've played a really integral role in each other's business journeys for almost the past decade now.
It's been iterative for sure.
So many iterations. Do you want to start, or shall I?
Okay, let's start with when I hired you on your birthday as my first ever coach, and didn't know a lot about you, because I was in such a coach client dynamic. I had set up this this dynamic in our relationship that it's one direction. I get to be vulnerable and exposed, and you get to see all my life and all my things. But I think I positioned you as the expert and the professional, the one not to be so available. But then as we coached over the months, it became something that I almost needed, right? To feel like I could grow and trust you and open up further. And so would ask you questions about yourself and your own training, because I loved your knowing that you were starting off as a coach. And I had this suspicion that you knew something that I wanted to know about coaching and working with humans. So I would like try to scratch at your experience when it wasn't the reason we were meeting necessarily, but I always wanted to go over on our calls to hear about you.
And I mean, I always appreciate that about the beginning of our journey, because coaching is such an energetic exchange, right? It's not just one way. Even if a coach is being of service and holding space for a client to process and to grow and to become, the coach is always being impacted too, and I often, I think at that point in my journey was still learning, like, how much do I share? How much do I hold back? How much of me do I put in the space versus create more space for my client's process? And that's something I've certainly grown and leaned into over the years. But, I heard you say that, like you felt like I had some knowledge that you wanted. And I guess like the theme that I hear in that is confidence. Like I was supporting you in claiming more confidence, and you were absolutely doing that same thing for me. Like you were my very first client. And it took me 36 no's. It took me 36 sample sessions, 36 invitations to work with me until I got my very first yes, which was you. And that was such a confidence boost for me. And I think it's so much a part of that experience for new entrepreneurs. Like, how much do I need to put myself out there in order to claim that very first win? And what is it going to take in order to generate that first client? And who do I need to become in order to generate the result? And like, I always think, like, what if I had stopped at 35? What if I hadn't asked for that referral, or put myself out there one more time, or made the vulnerable ask? And I think that energetically, like that is so much a part of the journey for new entrepreneurs. It's like stepping into their own confidence, claiming that space, discovering who they need to become in order to thrive. And we so often don't get that when we start our own businesses. We don't understand how much about business is a mindset journey.
And I don't think we hear enough of the stories of the behind the scenes before the results. For me, I learned from the experts and the people who were doing it, and then compared myself to them. And so that word confidence is really powerful, because I think it's the confidence that that I could do that while also knowing the humanity that was there. And then like, I could relate to that. Oh, whether it was you or another coach I met on the journey, like they didn't have it all figured out in the beginning too. That doesn't make me different or bad or wrong. That just makes me on this journey. So it was like a cool modeling that we did.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how we started. And then our relationship iterated as you really made that career switch for yourself. And we both registered in the same coach training program. And then we became colleagues in the first iteration of becoming colleagues.
Yeah, we became colleagues just because we were both on this journey to coach training. And I remember marveling every time you shared like a cool new decision you had made for your business, whether it was like higher rates or a different demographic that you were going to pursue. You always spoke about it with like glee and pride. And that has always stuck with me. But then we became colleagues by way of like sitting in the same room and training the same cohort of people, and rooming together while we did that.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know this about mine or Laura's journey, after we both graduated from the coach training program, we stayed on as mentors, and coach trainers, and we helped train new coaches. And, they say, if you want to master something, teach it. And for me, that part of my own experience, and I know yours too, Laura, like it was so deeply supportive training other coaches as we built our own practices, our own personal inquiry, our own contextual lens and listening, and kept ourselves humble along the way. And I think that that's really important to say at this point in the journey of the coaching industry, because I see so many people calling themselves coaches or doing a weekend training and then claiming master coach. And it's like, our program was a year long. We worked with a coach every week that whole year. It was in multiple 5-figure investment. Like it was a commitment, and that means something to me. And I appreciate that about kind of who we are and how we run our businesses, is just the level of integrity and reverence we hold for being credentialed coaches through the International Coaching Federation, and our both individual and collective commitments to our own personal growth. Since 2014 for me and 2015 for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The investment was of every kind. And it wasn't just the honing of the coaching skill set, it was the partnership and the accountability that having others like you on the team to sort of build the coaching practice and the business side of it, because that was something that had to happen alongside, right? To really turn into the business that we wanted. So that is completely a necessity in my mind as far as building a new business, is having a group of people around you who are doing the same thing or a year or two ahead or behind, just for that, like the generational growth that can happen with somebody who's doing the same thing a little bit ahead or a little bit behind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And the camaraderie and the accountability and the inspiration that can be created through that experience of building a business in community, and in that collegial way, and I think that honestly, that's such a part of my own passion about running the mastermind, is just seeing that, like that third mind, that mastermind that can be created when you bring varying perspectives and energies and gifts together. Like just, I guess the quote is, a rising tide lifts all boats. And like, I really believe that. And I've experienced that personally. And one of my very favorite stories about you, during that iteration of our journey, was when we were playing a game to get hired, and you were playing a game to get hired that weekend. And do you remember the goal you'd set for yourself?
I think it was 3. I was going to get hired by 3 people that weekend.
Yeah. You wanted to get hired by 3 clients in one weekend, which, like when we relate to business as a game, anything's possible when we take our journeys, our experiences significantly, or we're attached to the outcome. Like we don't necessarily get to have fun along the way. But so back to you and fun. So you were playing a game to get hired by 3 clients that weekend. And I was so inspired by who you were being in the process. And I know you know what I'm going to share, but like you were in the hot tub, pregnant.
They were in the hot tub. I was pregnant.
You were pregnant with your feet in, right?
No, I walked over to them.
Oh my gosh, you just cold approached them in the hot tub? Oh my gosh. Okay.
I forgot that tidbit. So imagine this, y'all. Like Laura's pregnant, like very pregnant, and a beautiful pregnant with her second baby. So she's, been there before, and she's playing a game to get hired. And so she goes and approaches, was it a couple in the hot tub?
Couple. I knew the mom. I knew she was a mom, but it was a mom with her two boys, like who were off to the side, and she and her partner were very, very expressive with their affection publicly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did the story go from there?
She looked approachable enough, and I was feeling bold enough that I just sat down and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And struck up a conversation, knowing my intention was to invite her to a sample session and to explore coaching with me. But whatever I sensed about her and her family vibe was spot on, because she turned out to be an entrepreneur, married to an entrepreneur. And so she was an ideal client that I never would have met had I not been trying to do this crazy thing of getting hired that day.
So you got hired by that client.
Yeah.
And then you got hired a second time by someone that you approached, again, pregnant, sitting at a bar.
Drinking my ginger ale.
Drinking your ginger ale. And for me, like that story sums up so many things. Like, first of all, it sums up the inspiration, the courage, the bravery that's possible when you lean into like the collective power of a group container and being challenged to step outside of your comfort zone. One. On a second level, it speaks to me something that I really see that you bring to our partnership that is not one of my strengths. Like having that willingness to just go up to people and approach them and invite them to a conversation. I have become like that's just not my style. That's not my vibe. I so much am more inclined to harvest relationships and to nurture relationships over time and to attract them to me versus go after them. But your like going after itness is such a lovely balance. Like it's like that beautiful blend of the masculine and the feminine, which I think that we balance each other out in different ways, because I think in other ways of building my business, I think like I bring a lot more of the masculine energy of like doing what I say I'll do by when I'll do it, following through. Like my integrity with my word is something that I've nurtured over the years. And you, on the other hand, like have this like very receptive flow and welcoming and like just like a grace that I think is like a lovely way that we balance out energies, which I think is so important when you're building out a business. Like you have to learn how to balance the hustle with the flow.
Yes. And to be in action without losing the joy or the opportunity, right? And that thing that people are connected to when they choose to hire you, right? I love that you named the polarity, because it's like a dance of polarity. And we take turns. But I also love how delighted you are with those stories, because they make me laugh when you tell them. But had I not had the like healthy sense of urgency, had I not had other people telling me it was fun, right? Like that team game dynamic, I don't know that I would have done it. So I love that you remind me of these stories, because there's so much more like the idea that a half moon becomes 9 times brighter when it's full, not 2 times, right? Because you just add that layer and it just becomes so much more potent and radiant. That's what I think is possible with partnership like that.
I love that. So then let's see. So then our relationship continued to evolve. I myself first exited the coach training role. You followed, I think a year after I did, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that time, I launched the mastermind, the Unbounded Mastermind. And I think you joined the mastermind when I was in the third cohort.
I joined 2021.
Yeah.
July 2021. Yeah.
I think we were in the third cohort then. And I mean, I love the energy you bring to a room. I think like as a participant, I always love like your willingness to just put your process on loudspeaker and let people in. I think that like willingness to be vulnerable and transparent invites others' vulnerability and willingness to participate. It's just like such an inviting energy.
Hmm.
And then when you graduated, I was so ready for more partnership and wanting to like rely on someone else in my facilitation of the program to really break up with that idea that I had to do things on my own. And I invited you to jump on board and be a co-coach with me in the mastermind. And then our relationship iterated again.
Yeah. We became co-facilitators. It almost like repeated the pattern, right? Like when I hired you as the coach and facilitator of the Unbounded Mastermind, it supported my exiting the coach training program, right? Because it was a structure that allowed me to transition out of this other structure that had been so supportive for me, but with an energy of more humanity. I really was longing for more of the business strategies that I hadn't developed in the coach training program, even though I could have. What I focused on was community and developing the coaching skill set. And what I was missing was some really basic, relatable skill sets for entrepreneurship, for business building, having a background in education with parents who were educators. I knew the academic world really, really well. And I was the first entrepreneur to step out into that role. And I was missing some things. And so the mastermind community really filled in some basics that I didn't even know that I was needing. And so that sort of realigned some things that I was looking for before I could really claim the six figures and then step into that new level of partnership with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking to that. And, for our listeners, if you haven't already listened to the first episode where I interviewed Laura, we chatted all about Laura's work in the coaching world and all the work that she does with cycle wisdom. So we'll link that in the show notes in case you'd like to tune into that episode. It's really interesting. But energetically, when I brought Laura into the role as the co-coach in the mastermind, I was also creating space for me to step into the next iteration of my business yet again, because we all know that when we want to scale and grow a business, once we've reached a level of stability, we have to create space to remove ourselves from the day-to-day operations of our business. And having partnered with people in the past and having experienced some challenges and a lot of learnings on that journey, like I was really interested in dipping a toe again in partnering with someone who I knew shared the same values, shared the same integrity, had the same level of training and commitment to their own personal growth that I did. So you were such a safe place for me to lean into my next edge in business. And I think for empath entrepreneurs, that's such an important reminder because relationships are the lifeblood of our business. And I say this a lot, but our businesses will only thrive to the degree that our relationships do. And for empath entrepreneurs, it's so important to nurture values-aligned relationships over time. And most of our relationships don't end. We iterate, we reinvent, we change roles, we change the dynamics. Like, so many of my clients have become friends. One of my early clients was one of my bridesmaids. Like, I think that's just such a gift of who we are in the business world, is we are endless relationship. And so I think that our partnership really models that level of reinvention in relationship. And I think I'm just putting this together for myself, but it also models a level of transparency and vulnerability that is available inside of empathic relationships, because we can heal or reinvent or handle any conflict inside of relationship.
Yes. And we, as human partners, have had our opportunity to practice what we preach, right? Like, we're not always like perfectly partnered. And I think that when we can sort of talk through something and have difficult conversations, knowing that we're in a safe place, it just allows for a greater depth of relationship to open up. And so it's delightful, and something I'm so grateful for in our partnership, that there's nothing that we can't get through together because of our training. And we kind of trust that is at the foundation, but also the years of relationship and the degree to which we practice.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had had that wisdom when I first started out, like that, as I would let go of relationships along the way, I discover what I needed to keep relationships, what I wanted in order to reinvent those relationships, to iterate and evolve on those relationships. And I think that, that's just something you learn as you practice being a heart-centered entrepreneur and allow the journey to unfold.
Mm-hmm. So cool.
So this has been lovely. I think I just want to leave our listeners with a couple of invitations. So if you want to just experience like a little bit more of being with Laura and myself as you consider whether the Emerge Mastermind might be a fit for you, we have one more non-networking power hour that's coming up on Monday, September 18th at 12 noon Eastern time. We will link to the registration in the show notes in case you'd like to join us. We'll also include the link for the Emerge Mastermind in the show notes in case you'd like to learn more about our brand new offering for early entrepreneurs in their first 1 to 3 years of business. Enrollment for the program closes on Friday, September 22nd, and we begin the last week in September. We would love to have you join us if you're looking for your next support structure or container to find your footing as an empath entrepreneur. We love talking about this stuff. Clearly, we would love to support you along your way. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here, Laura.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.